Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Welcome to the fourth podcast of the Benchmark School. Today, inshallah, we will discuss the history of Israel and Palestine conflict. First, I'll introduce my guests. To my right is Brother Yusuf Patel, who is a student of AS, the senior class, the A2. He's the students of science, and on my left, Brother Mujtaba Nayab, he's commerce student and he's also in A2, A levels. We have been seeing the history, the conflict of Israel and its bombings on Gaza, and it's the world news right now. And there is an image of the map of Israel that we see a lot on news as well. And the Turkish President Erdogan, he also presented this map in the UN, saying that this is what the Israeli atrocities are. So today, inshallah, we will present this map to our audience, and there are 6 images from 1917 and to the present time. We will explain what these images show and what is the history that lies behind it. So first, I'll ask Brother Yusuf to explain the history and till 1946.
Jazakallah, sir. First, we should understand why Jews are doing this. Jews basically claim that this holy land, the land of Israel and Palestine, is promised to them. They see this from the Bible in the book of Genesis. Now, Quran also mentions about Jews, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave 2 warnings to the Jews in Surah Bani Israel, verse number 4 to 7. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells? He tells that Jews will create violence on the earth twice, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish them twice. The first warning came true in 587 BC when Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon destroyed the Solomon's temple in Israel and exiled all the Jews from there. But then Jews came together again, but they created violence again as predicted by the Quran. And then the second warning came true in 70 BC, 70 AD basically, where Roman general Titus came. He destroyed the second temple which was built by Jews again, and again exiled all the Jews from Israel. Then in Surah Bani Israel, verse number 8 and 9, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again warns. This is the third warning which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test them again, and they must believe in the truth of Islam. They should accept it. But now we see the Jews are again misbehaving and they are again disobeying the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So this is a very very important point, that why Quran has mentioned Bani Israel and their history in so much detail in Quran, and it was revealed 1400 years ago, but still there are a lot of religions in the world, but Jews and Christians hold key importance even in today, and Quran mentions these 2 religions the most. And as Yusuf mentioned, there's a whole surah Bani Israel, and the first ruku of that surah describes the history of Jews in these 2 aspects, that their temple will be destroyed twice because they created mischief in the world. Yes.
Okay, now we should also understand the term we hear, Zionism. What is it and how it came into being? This term was coined in 1890, and this was a national practice which was started by the Jews to regather in Israel and establish their sovereignty there, which was lost during the raid by the Roman general Titus. Now, we should understand a bit about geography and history of the land of Palestine and Israel. This land was under the Ottoman Empire in 19th century, in 18th century, and the Ottoman rule was over here. Here, Jews lived in a very few amount, but the majority of population was of Palestinian Arabs. In 1916, Palestinian Arabs wanted independence, and they wanted to gain independence and create an independent Arab state under the Ottoman Empire. They wanted to free from the Ottoman Empire and create a separate Arab state.
So this is the time of World War I, and Ottoman Empire was one of the parties in that, and they were against Britain and the other allies. So what you're saying is that it's right in the middle of the World War, there was Arab movement within the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. There was an Arab movement there, and then to gain independence, they asked the help from Britain. and Britain ensured them that they will give them full independence, but in return, they wanted the Arab support and Arab people to help them in war against the Ottoman Empire, which Arab people did. Now here we see how Britain was dishonest and played a dual role here. The result of World War I was that Ottoman Empire and its allies lost the World War I and Great Britain came into a commanding position. But they were dishonest how in 1917 a Balfour Declaration came which stated that His Majesty's government view with favor of the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object. It being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. Now what it meant the British had made two promises at the same time for the same piece of land. The first promise which was made in return of the Arab help for the World War I was the Arab independence, the Arab Palestinians independence. But at the same time, they made a promise to the Jewish people who wanted to establish the state of Israel on the same holy land, and they provide them an umbrella in which the Jews can slowly and gradually come and eventually establish the Israeli state there. And we saw how after the fall of Ottoman Empire, when in 1920 the Leagues of Nations provided Great Britain with the power in the Palestinian state, but the motive was that the eventual power would be held over to the locals there, and then Great Britain will come out of here.
So this is very important, that Britain's role is actually key in this conflict, that they took the support of Arabs against Ottomans with a promise that they will give Arabs this land, but the same year they had a Balfour Declaration, the declaration that there will be Jewish state in this land, and then when the League of Nations was formed after World War I, they gave Britain the administration of this area in order so that Britain will see to it that the local people are sovereign and they govern this state. But instead of doing that, what you're saying that Britain actually helped Jews come in and settle in the Arab land.
Yeah, during the period of 1920 till 1948, Britain helped Jews to come there and eventually establish the state of Israel, which Jews claimed as an independent state eventually in 1948, as we can see in the third and the fourth picture.
So the first image that we see is 1917 map, and the importance of this date is the Balfour Declaration, and we see that there are no Jewish settlements in Palestine. But the second picture is 1946, where we see a lot of white dots, and this is because of the Britain's support. This administration through the Palestine mandate given by League of Nations to Britain. There are a lot of Jewish settlements that we can see in the second image, and in the third image is the UN proposition of 1947. For that, which to explain which, I would like Brother Mujtaba to shed light on this part.
Jazakallah khair. In 1947, in the third image, we can see that the United Nations has proposed a two-state solution for the issue of Palestinian people, dividing the land into two separate states, one Arab state, the Palestine, and a second a Jewish populated state, namely Israel. So you can see that the West Bank has been given to the Palestinian people, and the western side, the Gaza, including Gaza, the famous Gaza Strip, has been given to the Palestinian people. It must be noted that this partition plan was given 56% to the Israeli people, while only 44% was given to the Arabs. It must be noted that this absurd assumption was made during the partition that in the future more Jewish settlers, migrants would migrate to the Holy Land and would reside here, so they are entitled to a much greater portion of the land. So as we move forward in 1948...
So this is very important part, that this was an internationally recognized part, which we see in the third image, the UN proposition, and they have given so much land, which we see in the white area, to Israel, And at that time, there were very few Jews living in this land, and this was an Arab land. So, therefore, a lot of Arab states did not accept this UN proposition, but this was passed, this resolution. Why? Because again, the Western powers, the Britain, the United States, and Russia, they were behind the this resolution, and the Israel declared itself as an independent state.
So I would also like to add some information here, because the Israeli land that was proposed by the UN, it must be noted that 90% of the Israeli land was owned by the Palestinian people.
That even the white area, you're saying, even the white area in the third picture, the 90% of the people living there are Arabs,
Indeed.
Palestinians.
So in 1948, in May, when Israel comes into being, the state of Israel is being formed, the Arab countries rose against in anger and put a war on Israel. But due to the lack of unity and, let's say, arms and aid, the Arabs lose the war, and this leads to Israel occupying more area than it was entitled to.
And there another reason of why Arabs lost the war of 1948 is the support of the superpowers of the time, the unconditional support and the mysterious relationship that the Western powers, the world powers had with this small piece of land. The Jews, it's that they claim that they have, this is a promised land. But why Western powers, which call themselves democratic and secular, why are they supporting Israel? So this was one reason why Arabs lost the war of 1948.
Yes, so as they lost the war, this led to the Palestinian area that was given to them to shrunk into lesser part, because the other land was being grabbed by the Israeli forces.
And here in the image 4 that we are discussing, the war of 1948, we can see 2 green patches. And we hear a lot in the news, the Gaza and the West Bank, but we don't know where these are located. So in the image 4, you can see the bigger part. It's the West Bank, which is actually on the eastern side of the of this land, but it's called West Bank because it is left side of the sea. And the small strip, this is the Gaza Strip, and this is basically where today the conflict lies. Yes.
So after the 1948 war, the milestone, or we can say a major incident that took place in this whole conflict, was the 1967 Arab War. It was a 6-day war had taken place between Israel and the Arab forces, which resulted in the loss of the whole Palestinian land, as Israel took over whole the Palestinian land, and this led to the loss of the whole land for the Palestinian peoples.
It's very important. Our audience can also look this up. Noam Chomsky is a very renowned American thinker. And after this recent conflict, he said that 1967 was a very important milestone in Israel-US relationship. He said before 1967, US was not that much invested in Israel. It was basically supported by Britain and others. But 1967 gave America a lot of edge, and there was not much discussion of Holocaust before 1967. And he said, Noam Chomsky, that in the United States and the world universities, new courses like Holocaust studies and pictures and movies, all of this was formed after 1967. The Holocaust was the event of World War II, in the 1940s. But there was nothing till 67. And after 1967, when Israel occupied a lot of territory, it gave America some interest in this land. Yes, you can continue.
So in the last image we can see is that what is the result of the Oslo Accords that were done in 1993 under United
That's the last image, the sixth image.
So this was the result of the Oslo Accords that were done in 1993 under supervision of the United States. So we can see that the Gaza Strip has been returned to the Palestinian people, while the West Bank has been divided into small Palestinian patches. So it must be noted here that this was the result of the division of the West Bank into 3 sectors: Sector A, Sector B, and Sector C. Sector A was an area exclusively controlled by the Palestinian people. Sector B was an area in which the civilian control would reside by the Palestinian Authority, while the military control would be given to the Israeli forces. And the Sector C was an area exclusively controlled by the Israeli forces. It must be noted here that the Area C was 60% of the whole West Bank, and this Oslo Accords was a temporary agreement. It was done so that the land that was taken over by the Israeli forces of the West Bank in 1967 war, so that they can lead to a transfer of power in a democratic and a peaceful way. But unfortunately, no development has been made on this accord since 1993 till 2023. So no development has been made and no transfer of power has been done. And still the Israeli forces reside the whole power of the West Bank.
So this image actually shows how Israel is an illegal entity and how they occupied land. Even the United Nations resolution of 1947 did not give Israel as much land as they have today. We are even against the UN resolution of 1947, but the Israel, nothing matters for it, no international laws. So this is the explanation of the 6 images, and now I'd like Brother Yusuf to shed some light about the opinion of the world leaders today about this conflict.
Currently, we should understand what the real issue is. The real issue is very simple. Jews want to claim their holy land as they've been promised. They think it's a promised land and they want it no matter what they have to do for it.
And just recently, Netanyahu said in a publicized interview that Musa alayhi salam, Moses told them to capture this land 3,000 years ago, and therefore we are doing this. So, which is absurd. And Noam Chomsky, he has clearly said that at the back of their mind and the back doors, it's clear among the world powers that this is to be made a Jewish land. Why? Because it is promised thousands of years ago, and Israel is like they're living in a bubble. They have a logic that nobody has, that I want this land because of it is promised thousands of years ago. Yes.
So we need to understand what the current conflict is. It's between Hamas and Israel, how the world perceives it, and what the world says is that the real conflict is between Israel and Hamas. But we see the conflict between the two military wings is causing mass destruction and violence with the civilians. We hear the news, we get messages, we see posts on social media, on the mainstream media, how the places of Palestine, of the promised land, which they consider the holy land, is being bombed by the Israeli forces, and the air strikes continue there in the Gaza Strip as well as the West Bank. We need to see and we need to understand from the example of 9/11 that oppression is not a solution. After 9/11, we know how US military took 20 years and made much more violence than what is happening right now. But still, what the result was, after 20 years, still Afghan Taliban have came back in Afghanistan and are ruling Afghanistan right now.
And
So-
this is what the world is saying.
Yeah.
I mean, we are clear that as you have mentioned that the real conflict is very simple. That Jews want this land. Somebody else was living here. The only way is to kick them out and control the land. This is the real plan, and as we can see, this plan being executed since the Balfour Declaration and since today. But what the world is saying is that there is a group Hamas and they have attacked on 7th of October and therefore Israel is bombing, which is also absurd because Israel has been bombing and killing even before Hamas, even in West Bank where there is no Hamas. But how the world is perceiving is that the civilians are dying. The reason that we see a lot of world leaders speaking against Israel is what you are describing, that it's a conflict that is hurting civilians.
Exactly, it's a conflict which is not only hurting civilians, but it's killing, and thousands and millions of people, including babies, women and children, are being killed every day, are being bombed every day. They are dying of thirst, they are dying of hunger, they are dying of lack of medical aid, they are dehydrated, they cannot move, they cannot walk, they don't have freedom. The basic rights of humanity, they don't have them. How the UN Relief Chief states, he said that the current situation in Gaza, it defies the rules of war and the rules of basic humanity. This is how the world, the non-Muslim people of the world I'm talking about, not the Muslims who totally support the pro-Palestine movement, but the non-Muslims whose democracies, whose governments are supporting the Israel behind the back. I will talk about this. But the common people and the retired chiefs are in support of Palestine, that at least this should not happen. Due to this conflict, the civilians should not suffer. Now we see how mass people, thousands and millions of people in Western countries are coming out on the roads. They are taking out rallies in the support of Palestine, and they want this genocide to stop immediately. But at the same time, we should realize how the two-faced democracy of West is working. People are totally against the genocide in Palestine and the killing of civilians. But at the same time, the Western countries and their senators and their assembly members are totally agreed upon to help Israel in doing and in achieving their targets. An example, Israeli minister stated that this is our 9/11. What happened on 7th of October, this is basically our 9/11. It is a cover they want to get in order to get this land freed from the Palestine, and as they know, it is the promised land. But they also said that they will do whatever it takes to wipe Hamas off the surface of the earth, which meant basically that they want to make the greater Israel. They want to take this place in their hands no matter what they have to do. Now, seeing the situation, what the powers must have done, they should have stopped this situation immediately because it's hurting the civilians. And the claim of US that the people should be free and all that freedom stuff is on stake. So they must have stopped this genocide immediately. But instead, the US President Joe Biden, he went to Israel, and what he stated there in his conference was that US will remain forever, and forever till it remains, it will support Israel in whatever they are doing and achieving what their goals and targets are.
And very interesting part is, again, then Noam Chomsky has a very good analysis, that the question of why US supports Israel, this is a frequently asked question. Even the Americans are asking, why are we supporting Israel? And there is no logical answer unless you find the religious reasons, again the promised land and all that stuff. So Noam Chomsky has described how the evangelical Zionism, the Christian Zionism, is supporting the Jewish Zionism, and he said that the Christian Zionism is stronger and older than Jewish Zionism. The evangelicals of the America, Donald Trump and his party, they want Jews to have independent state in the Holy Land. Why? Even though they are Christians. Because it is their belief that when Jews will inhabit the promised land, then Isa alayhi salam will come on the second time and kill all Jews and give them power. And Noam Chomsky said, who can be more anti-Semitic than that? That they think the Jews will be wiped off from the face of the earth only by giving them promised land, and then they will be damned eternally in hell. Who can be more anti-Semitic than them? Those who are holding the label of anti-Semitism. Yes.
So I will just conclude this by saying that we have the current going on example of 9/11, what happened in the 20 years after 9/11, and we must understand that the policy of bomb first and plan later has not worked from the 9/11, and eventually the oppressors will get against the oppressed ones, and the oppressed one will stand against them.
Yes, the key word is oppressor, and Israel has a right to defend itself is the claim that everybody is making. And you rightly mentioned that oppressor has no right to self-defense. And I'd like Brother Mujtaba to tell us what we can do, what Muslims should do.
So that I think it is a practical approach. We need a practical approach to this issue. But before we delve into this topic, we must know that what we can do is can be divided into two parts. One is the individual part, what an individual man can do, and one is what a state can do, what Muslim leaders can do. So we can see that and on the individual level, we can do what is where we can seeing that boycotting can be a effective way of defeating someone.
The boycotting of their product,
yes,
the brands.
Because recently, after the event of the 27th of October, TRT World reported that there was a decrease in the stock market for the Israel. the Israeli shekel decreased in the value and devaluated. So we can see that this boycott can have a significant impact on the oppressor, which is Israel in this case. So we can initially boycott the products, and on the, we can see that as Muslims, we can at least make dua, that the kunut nazla. So, and we can stop, but we should not stop making dua, because at the end of the day, it is Allah who gives victory, and it has been promised to us that victory will come, that Allah's help is near. So we must passionately make dua for them. So while on the other side, the Muslim rulers' side, we must make sure that our rulers get into this topic and start supporting them. Unfortunately, we are seeing that the most of the Muslim Ummah has been quiet on this issue, especially Muslim leaders, especially we are Pakistanis, and we can see that no such tweets or some practical, nothing has been done in this issue. So it is very unfortunate for us that we were not able to do anything to take part in the war.
I would like to add that, as you have mentioned, that the boycotting of the products is something that we can do. And because it's as we are recording it, this is the first week of November, and people get their salaries and they go to shopping. It's very important that we should know which brands we should avoid, and secondly, you mentioned dua that we should do, and thirdly, you mentioned the rulers and their role.
The Muslim rulers, as they have the power, they have the resources, militarily, financially, that has been given to them by Allah. So I think it's more binding upon them to practically enter into this issue. So unfortunately, we can see that the Muslim nations, Muslim leaders have been quiet on this grave issue. So it is very unfortunate to see, but I think that if the people can force their rulers by the means of protest, by the means of passing ordinance, by means of legislation.
Yes, and that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained this ummah, that the rulers can be forced, and we should not underestimate the power of the public. And another thing we can do is spreading awareness of the issue, and this podcast is doing the same thing. We should tell our younger generation, the kids, of the history and the reality of the issue. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us, help the Muslims of Gaza and Palestine, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us peace. I thank my guests for this program, for this awareness talk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.